Hi, friends. Welcome to the Engage for More podcast. This is episode number 138, and we're so excited that you're here. We have something super special for you.
Yes, we do. We'd love to introduce you to a friend and somebody who I think is going to lend a lot to our conversation today, Miss Melanie Redd. And we want to tell you just a little bit more about Melanie. Melanie is a highly rated speaker, motivational speaker, with 30 years as a women's teacher and a leader. Melanie works with individuals and groups and organizations to encourage them to find hope, peace, and purpose in life. In addition, she's a best-selling author of 9 published books. That's amazing, Melanie.
That's a lot of books.
That's a lot of books. She's a blogger and a mentor of women, and she's a personal friend of mine that I've gotten to know over the past years since COVID, I think, since a little bit, but 2019, I think, is when we kind of started crossing paths, and just excited today to be talking about how Melanie engages with Jesus and just a refresh about how we engage for more with Jesus.
Yes. This is our Jumpstart June.
That's right. Tell them about that, Pam. We're going to re-jumpstart.
Yes.
Right?
So we are going to really jumpstart again during the month of June and encourage you to engage Jesus. Maybe you never have. So maybe for the first time to engage him in every area of your life, or maybe for you, June is going to be a re-engage, a time where you go, oh man, I'm really not leaning into him like I used to. Or maybe you've lost your passion, or I mean, for some of our friends, they still haven't come back to church since COVID, right? And so it's a time just to re-engage, or maybe for the first time ever to learn what that really means, what that really looks like, and how to experience the more that Jesus came to offer.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have you
I'm
here,
glad
Melanie.
to be here.
Yes,
you.
we are. So
Yes.
I'm Gwen, and it's just been a delight to get to know Melanie over the past few days, and even more so over the past 24 hours. So we look forward to you really sharing with us and our listeners and viewers how you engage Jesus throughout the many, many things that you do in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here with y'all.
Absolutely.
We just had a meal together, and it's so fun and good to be together.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Melanie, we'll start off with just how do you engage Jesus? I mean, your mom, podcaster, author, daughter, wife, ministry leader.
Yeah.
How do you find the time to bring Jesus into all of that?
That's a great question. And, I don't think I'd want to do any of that without him. In fact, I wouldn't. But for me, it just starts with a personal relationship with him, because I feel like for a lot of people can do a lot of things, but I don't want to do anything without his help and his wisdom and his power. And so I get up early. We go to bed early. We were laughing about that. I read where quarterback Tom Brady, slept 9.5 hours a night, and I decided I needed more sleep.
I love it.
Yes.
But we go to bed sometimes 9 o'clock or earlier, and we get up a lot of times at 4:30 or 5, and it's just quiet. Everything is calm. The world is quieter, and that seems to be the best time for me personally to engage Jesus. I feel like I need time with him to fill up my cup before I pour out to anybody else. And so that's just kind of how I view it, if that's a good way to answer your question. I think a lot of people start their day and they don't engage him, and they forget that they're going out into a day and they need something to give out. Right. And so I tell people, it's like one day I plugged in my crock pot, or I got my crock pot out, got everything out, put the chicken in, put the sauce in, and left for the day. And it was plugged in, but I never turned it on. And
I've done that.
I came back at the end of the day and it was cold chicken.
Right.
And it was like, what are we getting tonight? But I think a lot of Christians do that. We know how to plug in. We are connected to the source, but we just don't ever turn the power on, and we go throughout a day
I love that
without any
analogy.
power or any hope or any warmth. And we get to the end of the day and we realize we didn't do what we meant to do because we never really turned the power on.
Right.
And so that's kind of my goal every day is I have a friend that mentored me. She said, that's foundational. You need time with Jesus every day, even if it's just a few minutes to start you out.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. And so that leads me to, so now we're remembering not only to plug in, but to turn on. And so how does that impact your day?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. You know, I was thinking about, for me, a lot of what I do, I usually will have some time with the Lord. If I get up early enough, sometimes I'll walk first. We live in Memphis, and it's hot, and so I like to walk before the sun comes up. So that it has to be a certain time of day.
Right.
But I love to have, especially when nobody is moving yet, got to have coffee. That's always caffeine is needed for me to engage Jesus.
Yes.
But then I have a Bible that I love. I like the New Living Translation just because it's so easy to read, and it's just my personal Bible.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I love to have the Bible. I have a journal and I write things down. I had a professor that taught us that if you will put things in writing, you'll remember better. And then I have some devotional books. I read through books, inspirational books. I read like just a few pages at a time, and I've read many, many books that way. But I try to just focus on spending some time with the Lord where I'm getting poured into. By Him, by the Word, by what I'm reading, by what I'm writing, and it just helps me to engage my relationship with Him. You know, and the walking, I will walk in my neighborhood, and it's quiet, and I'm noticing the usually it's I don't often walk when it's raining, but usually it's beautiful. The sun's coming up. There's squirrels, there's birds. There's very few people early when I walk, but it's quiet, and it's just time to think and talk to Him and enjoy the fact that, you know, there's the old hymn that says, "What a friend we have in Jesus."
Yes.
And so I love that I have a friendship with Him, and that I can talk to Him and say, "What are we going to do about this child?" Or "What are we going to do about this person?" Or "How are we going to handle this, Lord?" And just to be able to feel like I can just talk to Him. He is my best friend.
Yes, that's so good. I love that. Love that so much. And I think it's just practical application, right? I think sometimes we get so hung up on how do I engage Jesus that we don't engage Jesus. Like we make it much harder than it has to be, you know. And I love that, just that walking and talking with Him.
Yeah, I think my neighbors probably think I'm crazy if they actually see my lips moving when I'm talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's okay. I even raise my hand sometimes.
I think my neighbors probably think, because that's one of my most sweet times is when I'm walking, and I can just, you know, just kind of really get in conversation, like, what in the world, Lord? But sometimes I'm sure my lips are moving too, so I'm like, already they probably think I'm crazy, because it's really my walking with God and my sanity time, because my time with God is my sanity time. So, in fact, one of my neighbors pulled up next to me and they're like, "You're making us all look bad." I said, "Oh no, I'm the what's keeping, you know, this house from not blowing up. It's my sanity time. It's my time with God. It's my prayer time. It's my, you know." And sometimes I'm even reading my Bible app, you know, walking and just reading, you know, because it is engaging. You're engaging your body for physical health too. And your mind with the outside for mental health, and so I'm right there with you.
Well, and you don't have to move fast.
No,
there's just something about the movement, and I'm not moving real fast. It's not like it's a speed walk or that kind of thing. But I will tell you, there are times I think we, as women especially, there's so much noise, and at home there's pets, there's laundry, there's spouses, there's children, there's grandchildren, there's all kinds of noise. And when you get out and you're just alone with Jesus, even if it's just sitting out on your back porch, but there's something about walking and moving and being away from all that keeps you kind of stressed, where you can think things through. There's a verse in the Bible around the time of Jesus' birth where Mary's finding out that she's going to have a baby, and it says she ponders this in her heart. And I want to be a woman who ponders. I want to kind of chew on it and think on it. And so I think it helps us to do that in prayer while we're with just our Jesus time. We're encountering Him by talking to Him about the things that matter to us. And sometimes that's in a journal. Sometimes that's with a trusted friend. But I love that I can talk to God about things first.
Right.
Yes.
And I love how you mentioned specifics of, God, what are we going to do about this child?
That sounded like Gwen.
Oh, you know about that one.
Except she says, "Daddy, what are we going to do about this child?"
That's what I call him. And I love how he answers in the most amazing ways. And sometimes it really requires nothing from us. just to stand firm on that word of trusting him. Lean in, as Pam likes to say, and let him lead and guide you. And that takes the pressure off of us as moms, wives, daughters, to not be responsible for the outcome.
Yeah, I love that. And even today, I'll give a good example without too much detail. I was praying for one of my children on a struggle that they are having. And as I was praying, I just said, Lord, I don't know what to do. Should I say something or not? And sometimes I'll just talk to him about those things.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
when you have grown children, you bite your tongue a lot and you pray a lot. And there was no audible voice, but there was a sense of, it's okay if you don't say anything, you just keep praying and talking to me about it. I got this child.
Yeah.
And I think when we ponder and we pray and we talk things over with the Lord, people say they don't hear from God or they don't sense that he's near. Well, you have to spend time with him.
Yeah.
And you have to connect with him and
Right.
reach out. And there's a verse that says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. So I love that when it's not anything you see or feel. I tell ladies all the time, but you can have an experience and an encounter that is very real.
Yes.
And a peace over those situations. So if you're struggling, if somebody's watching or listening and you're struggling in your marriage or with finances, there's another scripture that says we don't have because we don't ask. And I think for a lot of us as women, we're not getting any answers or solutions because we're not talking to God about it. We're
That's
not asking
right.
him for his help.
Right.
So that's what I love to do. And I do it, it's very practical. Whatever's on your heart, you can talk to him about.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's because we think he's not big enough. He can't handle it, or he's not concerned, or maybe he's too busy. We just finished that maybe series. And those questions pop up. Well, this is so focused, Lord, on what my need is. I'm sure you're trying to solve problems in Iraq or Israel. You know?
You don't have time for me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's so not true.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories, I guess I read it last year, that author Beth Moore tells. It's from the verse that says, there's a psalm in the Psalms that says, he bends down to listen when I pray. And she tells the story of her daughter when she was little. She said she bent down to listen to what her daughter was saying, and her daughter bent down too. And they were both squatted in this closet having a conversation. And I love to imagine that. I thought of that this morning when I'm walking. He is bending down, just waiting for us to talk. And he has plenty of time. I don't understand it, how he can handle Iraq and me, but he can.
Yeah.
And so that it's just a sweet truth to know that he loves us and that he sings over us and that he gets joy out of us and that he wants to have a friendship with us and that he bends down to listen when we pray.
Yes. So beautiful. I
That
love
is
it.
beautiful. You brought us each a copy of a devotional that you came out with a couple years. You said it had its 2-year birthday about just rest. And sometimes when we engage with him, we just need to rest in him. And so, yes, Gwen's showing about that. And
Here we'll show the book.
There, yes, there you go. Yes, you both are Vanna White. There you go. But tell us a little bit about that book in particular and how rest kind of comes in with engaging.
Sure.
Well,
in I guess it was 2000. It would have been 2020. I guess is when we started talking about this book. But I had written a book for high school girls. And a friend of mine who has a publishing company has a college girl. She's actually at Mississippi State. And she said, my daughter and her friends deal with a lot of anxiety. And she said, would you write a book addressing what do you do with your anxiety and your fears and your worries? And so I started looking up. She said, I want 3 months, so 90 days of devotions. And so I started looking up all the verses, and I thought, well, I don't want every day just to say, don't worry, don't be afraid, don't be scared, don't be nervous, don't be depressed. And so I began to look for the traits of God, because it was mostly Old Testament verses. And I bought all these books on the names of God and started just doing this big study. And it was a lot of fun, but it was interesting too that for everything we deal with, God has a remedy. There's some trait about God. Like I was telling y'all, when we feel like no one sees us, you can read in the Old Testament that Hagar had an encounter where she said, you're the God who sees me. And so there's a devotion about God sees you. When we feel alone, there's a devotional about God never leaves you, or forsakes you. And there are a lot of the verses in the New Testament where Jesus has some similar names. But it was really cool to put a challenge with each of the names of God. And so it's 90 days, encouraging, especially younger women. But I tell ladies, if you're young at heart,
Yes.
That's right.
the book applies.
Yes.
But it's to encourage us. This is the whole goal. God is big enough to handle whatever's going on in your life, and every devotion is to point us to look back to Him. And that's really kind of what I want to do, is just encourage women. That's what I do.
Yes.
He's our place we go to, and that's the only way I know that we make it through, and I make it through. And so
That's
I want to
right.
encourage other women and others, whoever it might be, to trust that we have a God we can turn to no matter what is going on.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And just here, Amazon, so we can get the book on Amazon.
The book is half price on Amazon.
Okay.
It's a good time to
I
get the
didn't want
book.
to tout that if it wasn't exactly high
Get
price,
that
but
book.
It is.
Yeah.
The price is $20, and I think it's like $10.99 or something on Amazon right
that's
now.
amazing.
awesome.
So
Yes.
go to Amazon and grab your
And
copy.
especially if you have, I'll tell you, it's got a journal in it, and the questions. I was a school teacher, so they're teacher questions, but there's a whole page for them to write. And a lot of women get it for their college and 20-something-year-old daughters. But there's also a section I love. I have a friend that's in a different church than I am, and she does this thing called declarations, and I love it, where you speak the truth out loud.
Oh, yeah.
And so every day has a truth that you speak out loud. So I open to, this one's called What is Your Calling? And then the declaration, and I encourage the ladies to read this out loud, is I declare that God has called me to do amazing things for Him and His kingdom. He has great plans to use me. I will surrender to His plans and put my yes on the table for His glory and honor. I want to get on whatever God is doing. And
She's
anyway,
speaking
so-
my language.
Absolutely. That is phenomenal.
So I think
Yes.
it's
I
just
love
as
it.
good for the girls. There's a scripture, there's a devotion, then there's a prayer and a declaration, and then a chance to kind of interact with what you read.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm excited
Wow.
about
So don't
the book.
just order a copy for yourself.
Yes.
Grab a copy
Yes.
for your daughter or your best friend or your mom even. I mean, that's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
grab
you.
those
Thank
copies.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that so much.
So you work with various organizations, ministry work. Can you tell us about Hope Ministry?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. This is kind of fun. I went back to school as one of the older students. My husband works at a seminary. And so I went back and got my master's a few years ago. And I was like, the mom of the class.
Right.
But when I was about to graduate, and I got a master's in education, when I was about to graduate, I was going to go to work at a college, and they didn't get their funding. And so I'm fresh out of school with my master's, needing something to do. And my husband said, why don't you start that blog that you've been wanting to start? So we started this Hope Ministry. We put our shingle up and and said, this is us. So, somebody said, put the awning out there and own it. So we
Yes.
did. And it's been so fun. And the
Yes.
ministry is really just me, what we call the team
Yeah.
of
Yes.
Hope Ministry. And, and the team, gets together. And we had a board. For a while, it was
Right.
just my husband. But it's been a lot of fun. I go to churches. I speak to a lot of small churches. One of my favorite things is to drive out to the middle of nowhere to some little church where there's a group of ladies that never get to come to any big event in a big city. And they
Yes.
just love having somebody come.
Right.
Yes.
And I have some ladies that I mentor. I've done some discipleship groups, some Bible studies, and that kind of thing. But it's just fun. You never know. There are times that I get to go and speak to big groups. There are times I go sit in somebody's living room with a group of ladies. And so it's been an adventure. But every day I told y'all I just get up and say, Lord, what are we doing today? And God just keeps opening doors.
Yes, yes.
And so, it's been fun adventure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you shared with us that you were on sabbatical.
Yes.
How does that look?
That's a
We're
great
so
sabbatical. I use that term because my husband's a professor, and it sounded really good. Last summer, my parents are aging, and they began to experience some health problems, and my children were kind of in a little bit of flux. And so I just felt like the Lord told me after 30 years of just going hard, I don't know, it was after doing 4 books in 3 years, and it was just a time to, it was like God said, be still. And I told y'all, I thought it'd be for about a month or 6
Right.
weeks, and it's been 10 months.
Yes.
I'm still on
counting?
sabbatical, but I'm getting used to it, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
So it's not retired. It's just, I told you I don't have as much of a title, and I don't work for an organization right now, but I just feel like God has said, I want you just to follow me. There's a
Yes.
verse in the Old Testament where it says Abraham went out not knowing where he was going.
Yes.
That's how I feel
Yeah.
every day. But it's been actually really cool. It's been a chance just to trust God and walk by
Yes.
faith. And so I wouldn't have picked it this way, but I'll tell you, it's taught me to rest. It's taught me to really notice and really listen and look and be aware. And maybe I was missing some things. I was going a little
Yes.
fast, probably.
So maybe he's preparing you for what
Yes.
he has prepared for you.
Yes, I absolutely believe that. You
Yes.
know, I love that saying. I think it's John Piper that says God's always doing about 10,000 things, and we see 2 of them. And I feel like there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I don't know
Yes.
what's coming, but I love that that's not my job to figure out. It's
That's
God
right.
who's at work
Yeah.
to do His will. And so I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's been really amazing just to follow Him in a little bit of a different kind of journey.
Right. And this is so encouraging to me because you're not only a wife, a mom of young adults who still need guidance, even though they may pay their own cell phone bill. But now, right? You are a caretaker.
Yeah.
And so that puts you in a different role than where you were, say, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet your light is still shining bright for Jesus. So how does that look engaging him as a caretaker now, whereas previously your parents were the ones who were giving the orders and directions, but now it's you.
Yeah. It's different, and a lot of people are there. I
Yes.
think we all reach those points. We all, and it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And that's an adventure every day too. But it's been fun. They live in a place where my husband and I have actually been asked to speak, and he sings, and so I got to
great.
go and speak at a thing they did, and it's just different.
Right.
You know, I got up to speak, and immediately 3 people fell asleep. And it was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be good. But then there was a
They
whole
were good Baptist people.
but then a lot of people are precious, and I love, and
Yes.
they'll come up and talk to me. The other people that live where they live, and I
Right.
feel like there's a whole other opportunity for ministry because ministry's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yes.
You know, just because you don't have you're not on staff at a place, or there's so much opportunity and there's so much hurt, and I think everybody can be used of God if they just put their yes on the table and say, I'll do whatever you want. And so I guess my heart is, Lord, just open the doors where I am today,
Yeah.
whether that's
Yes.
where I'm getting my hair cut or at the grocery store or with the seniors or at the doctor's office. There's no place God can't work.
Right.
And it just doesn't look quite like it did before. But I think that makes it kind of cool. And, and it makes it true that anyone can be used of God. I do believe a lot of women feel like, well, I don't have a seminary degree. I have one. It helped. I learned, but it doesn't make me super Christian. I just have a little more knowledge.
That's right.
You know, so
Yes.
I think any person that wants to be used by God can just say, Lord, I want you to use me, encounter Jesus, and then just see what he brings across your path.
And God's actually has a pretty good sense of humor because not only do I not have a seminary degree, I don't even have a college degree, and I teach leadership.
Yeah.
And I spoke. It was about a month ago, and we all laughed because the dean of the college and the assistant dean were sitting in the audience listening to me. And I'm like, this is just funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because for years I thought that I was uneducated. I couldn't do things because I was uneducated. And so I know listeners right now are thinking of all of these things, right, that disqualify you from being able to be used by God. And that's one thing that we really hope that we convey is that God can use you if you're willing, right? Look at all the people in the Bible and all the things they experienced and had done in their past. And so we want to convey that all the time, that it's not about you. It's not about your past, good or bad.
No.
It's about who Jesus is and what he has done for us. And so we'd love for you just to speak into that a little bit. You know, I think people allow their past pain and regrets and feelings stop them, right?
Yeah. That's a great thing to focus on. And I do think that we do limit ourselves. We all have things.
Yeah.
We all have issues and shame and embarrassment and guilt, and nobody gets through life with all that, without that. I'll tell you, I was reading a devotion this morning, and I think it's appropriate, and the author was talking about that she had some shame. And she's a well-known speaker and author. And she said what she has to do is she has to get before the Lord, like we were just talking about, and say, show me the truth, because I'm hearing the lie.
Right.
What's the truth? And so, if the lie is I'm not good enough, I was reading, and God just took me to Psalm 139 today, and I was reading about how he knit me intricately in my mother's womb, and he knew what my days would be. And when we're reminded how one of the translations says that we're beautifully and wonderfully made.
That's right.
And our soul knows it well. And sometimes our soul doesn't know it well.
That's
and
right.
so I was praying, Lord, I want to know it well. I want to feel it. I want to experience it. I want to remember that you knit me together like I am, and you knew what I was going to do all my days, the good, the bad, the ugly. And that you still have a plan for my life.
Yes.
And I believe Adrian Rogers, my pastor growing up, used to say, if you woke up this morning, God still has a plan for your life. And I just think anyone who is willing to surrender, to say, okay, Lord, I made all these mistakes. I have seen God use so many people who've been through so many things and he's not limited, because it's not really about us. We're just a vessel. And so he can use any vessel.
Yes.
And so I'd encourage anybody that's watching or listening, if you feel like your time is done, because I did ask that this year. I was like, okay, I've kind of reached a certain point in my life. Are we done? And I don't think I am.
No.
I think sometimes we just are in a transition season.
Where is that verse that says retire?
I don't see it.
I can't find the retirement plan.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? But I don't think I'd want to.
No,
I think of those people. I had a professor, his name was Dr. Gray Allison, and he made it to 92.
Oh, wow.
He was still teaching class at 90, talking to us about sharing our faith.
Oh, that's
and he was
amazing.
inspiring. And,
Yes.
And I want to be like that. And at his funeral, people talked about he never quit trying to serve the Lord or seeking to serve the Lord. So
That's
I
amazing.
don't know if I answered your question well, but I
you
think
did.
I think the heart is God is. It's up to him. It's not up to us. And he's the one that's at work. And I think it's Philippians 1:6 that says, I'm confident that he who began the work will continue
Complete
it.
it.
And he continues it our whole life. He doesn't stop. And even if we make a mistake or go through a divorce or something happens with one of our children that embarrasses us or we are struggling, he still wants to use us. And I love, because we're just broken people.
Yeah.
And he can take those pieces and that brokenness. And sometimes that's exactly... Have y'all found that?
Yes.
It's like he uses our mess to be
That's
our
right.
ministry.
Yeah, absolutely does.
For sure. Yes.
My mess is my ministry.
My messy is
Everybody
my
gets to hear
ministry.
about my mess.
But I think that's what people like.
Yeah.
I've noticed when I share the most honest pain, that's what people really respond to. And I'm like, oh, I don't really know that I always want to tell that.
Yeah.
But that's when I get that message on Facebook or that message on Instagram, and they say, I'm dealing with that too.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
So-
right. So you've been you told us a little earlier that you're blogging again. And so how can you point us and our listeners to your blog?
Well,
And
everything's under my name.
Okay.
And I would love to connect with your listeners or those that are viewing.
Yes.
It's Melanie Redd. It's REDD. I found out a couple years ago, it's Red. It's not Reed, but we had some ants. My husband had some ants that thought it wasn't fancy enough. Oh. And so instead of RED, they added a D, which just confused the world. But I'm on all the channels. I'd love to connect with your readers or listeners, and I love meeting new people online. And so mostly I just share scripture and little short devotions, and the blogs are all real practical. Like I have one up right now called 5 Bible Promises when your faith is feeling weak. And so that it's just a lot of real words of hope. It's Hope Ministry. So I do a lot of this.
That's right.
That's kind of my goal.
Yes. I love that.
I love that.
amazing.
Yes,
Melanie,
thank you.
thank you so much for the time that you've given us today to just talk to our listeners about engaging what you're doing and how we can come alongside you. And everybody, don't forget to go and get her book, Just Rest. Look up her blog, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, and if you on social media, just send me a note and say, hey, I heard you on the podcast and I wanted to meet you. And, I live in the area, or I know these ladies and I want to know you. And so it's not weird to do that. That's what we do on
right.
social media.
Yes.
And so reach out and I'd love to connect with you.
yes,
Yes,
that's
fun.
wonderful. So fun. We thank you so much for joining us today. And we we hope that you really take to heart if there is something in your heart that is just not, you're not engaging, ask God. And I know that this is something that I've been doing personally, is just identify the place in my heart that He needs to work on so that I'm engaging with Him fully. We thank you for listening today.